Hey everyone, this is Melina and welcome to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know me, how to put myself into a label box. I am a self-published author of 6 books, going on probably 7 in the soon time. I'm a student, kind of off and on. I also am the co-host of a podcast called AM and the PM podcast. I write some articles for Medium. I'll link all of those things below so you can kind of get to know me in whatever format is easiest for you. But I thought I would kind of start things off by doing something that I particularly think is cute. So backstory, I have a friend, her name is Sasu, who reads so many books a year. Like last year, she probably read 40 something books. And I was on Goodreads this year and I was saying, like I want to read more books this year than I did last year. I probably read like 12 books, which knowing me is a very little amount. I was also finishing grad school. So there's that context. But my friend was like, you should set it to 50. I'm setting mine to 50. And I was like, I don't know. The last time I read 50 books in a year was probably like middle school. But I did. And she also introduced me to this app called Libby. If you guys don't have it, you totally should get it. It's free if you have a library card, which to my understanding is free at your local library. And it gives you access to books. I think you can get them directly onto your Kindle, but I primarily use it for audiobook purposes because I found that the older that I've gotten, the less time I've had to kind of sit and read physical books. So it's good to listen to while I'm driving. I live really far from everything. So while I'm driving or while I'm doing laundry or while I'm doing other things. So I have been able to read quite a few books. I've been finishing some books that I was reading some little poetry books, especially trying to support books written by people I know. As a self-published author, I cannot expect other people to support me if I'm not willing to support other people. So I'll definitely be talking about some books written by people that I know and love. And I just want to say that all of my thoughts are my own opinions and are in no way reflective of like thoughts, opinions by any of the authors. So just that little disclaimer, I thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, so going off of what I had said earlier about my reading challenge, I thought it would be cute to do kind of like a month in review at the end of every month of the different books I read, the different things I thought about them. I know we're currently in February, so I'm going to go over some of the stuff I read in January. I am excited about February as well. Well, excited is an interesting word just because I feel like I've read a lot of interesting books this month. So be on the lookout for that. But okay, so I'm going to start with some of the physical copies of books that I own. So the first one is this book called When You Pray. It is a devotional, and it's one of those books that I probably would never, ever give to anyone to borrow because I've written such personal stuff inside of it. And there are sections where you're able to write, like there's questions. I really like it because there are sections. So like here's like the spread for one day, right? So there's a verse, John 14:27. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. That's from the NIV. And then there's a little conversational question. It says, are there any parts of your life that don't appear peaceful? Take some time to be specific and declare peace over those situations and circumstances right below. And this is really cool too, because what I wrote, I don't even remember writing this, but it's very true to how I feel a lot of the time. And I'll read it because this is not as personal of some of the other ones. I wrote, emotionally, sometimes I worry that things will come crashing down, but I'm literally already operating out of a place of victory. God is not cruel. He is merciful, abounding in kindness and grace. So it's great because it really provides like a place for you to reflect every day. I'm currently reading like 3 physical devotionals and 2 Bible plans on my phone. So I'm really like the kind of person who I'm a creature of habit. I really like things that I can kind of check in on every day. So this is really helpful. And in addition to that, there's also a little blurb. So like this one says peace, and I'll just read it to you. They're meant to be prayers. Today, all of heaven stands at attention to hear the cries of my heart. Lord, I thank you for being my Jehovah Shalom. You are my peace. You are my peace in the midst of the storm. I have gone through several storms in my life, and I thank you for being with me. You have always been near me, with me, and for me. I know that if God be for me, who can be against me? So today, I am grateful that in the complexities of life's ever changing landscape, your peace has calmed the storms of my life. You said in your word that you will keep me in perfect peace if I keep my mind stayed upon you. Isaiah 26:3. I am determined to keep my mind stayed on you, and I am confident that the peace that surpasses all understanding will guard my heart and my mind in Christ Jesus. We kind of did this along with it's 21 days, and we did like a 21-day surrender fast, and we prayed a lot during it because it's a book about prayer. So I definitely would recommend maybe even doing some kind of fast while you follow along. And Pastor Matt and Pastor Mona both just released a joint devotional called When We Pray. It's for couples and it's love month. So definitely would recommend getting that. So I'm going to say 5 stars. All right. So to follow that up with another book that I thought was really great. For those of you who don't know, I love C.S. Lewis. I love the way that he conceptualized God and how he said that it's good for us to teach the principles of the Bible in a really simple way because that's what Jesus did. He taught through parables in a way that was simple for people to understand. So I love all of his books. So I was looking up C.S. Lewis in the Libby app and I ended up coming across this book called Becoming Mrs. Lewis about his wife. Granted, I don't know that much about C.S. Lewis's like personal life. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, let me click it, let me listen. And I didn't realize how spicy it was. It's like really, really spicy. It's obviously based on a true story, but it's just dramatized. So C.S. Lewis later in his life, like I want to say in his 50s or in his 60s, married someone named Joy Davidman. And she was like him, an atheist earlier in her life, and then ended up discovering God. And they ended up being pen pals because she was trying to find out more about God. And she read an article that was written about him and then got in contact with him through that so that they could kind of talk to each other about God, which is like, this is already so cute. But the problem was that she was married. She also had 2 kids. Her husband was, to put it bluntly, like the worst. He was very like verbally abusive, I think was an alcoholic and was constantly cheating on her. So she tried to make their marriage work. And I think she thought for a while that her and C.S. Lewis were just like friends. But there was definitely some emotional affair stuff going on. And then eventually she got really, really sick and they sent her to England. She's from New York. He was from England. They sent her to England to go kind of spend time and refresh herself. And I think that's where she really fell in love with him. And they had this kind of like, she eventually did end up divorcing her husband, who like was sleeping with her cousin and was like, I love her and not you, which hot mess, but that's a story for another day. And then she ends up like taking her kids and moving to England. Um, and there's this kind of like tension between them. And I mean, I guess this is a spoiler, but this is also like real life. So if you don't want the story spoiled, I would suggest skipping like a minute past this. She ends up getting cancer. She ends up getting diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I forget which kind. In the story, once again, this is dramatized, so I don't know if this is 100% true, but it's in that C.S. Lewis finally admits to her that he loves her. And she's like, well, what the heck? Like, I'm dying. This is not the best time. Why couldn't we have had this moment earlier? And she prays for God to intervene. And she says that her cancer was halted for a period of a few years. So they end up like living together as a married couple in England for a few years until she eventually dies. And he died a few years later. And I know that sounds really sad, but it's really, really beautiful. It's like a really beautiful story of redemption and how childhood trauma can cause us to replicate those relationships romantically down the line. And also, I don't know, I really love like a close friends to lovers story. It was really, really beautiful. I was sobbing, weeping by the end of it. Like I spent the last 30 minutes of the audiobook just like profusely crying. So just be aware of that. And the way the author wrote it was just absolutely beautiful too. I think she captured the story really, really well. So yeah, 5 stars. Okay, the next book that I have to talk about is The Betrothed by Kiera Cass. Um, hmm, where to begin? So I I really like this author. I read the selection series with Prince Maxon Shreve. And he was like the first literary character, in addition to like Augustus Waters from The Fault in Our Stars, who I ever really like fell in love with. Um, but this book, it just it wasn't giving what I wanted it to give. Um, I feel like the main character was annoying and I just didn't like her. Kind of reminded me of like Tris from Divergent, except whatever the opposite of that is. Like Tris, I didn't really always love her because I felt like she was emotionless, whereas the character and the main character in this book, Hollis, she was just, I wasn't rooting for her. And there's kind of like a bit of a love triangle that goes on, and I feel like none of those two relationships, it's either her and the king or her and this like mystery guy who comes in, and I love that storyline, like the kind of morally gray, like dark haired character that comes in, but I just didn't feel it. um yeah, I can't really explain why or what it was about the story, but it was one of those books that I finished because I was like, I need to finish this 50 book reading goal, and I hope it eventually gets more interesting. And it kind of did. It picked up a little bit at one point when they started talking more about like the political the political world of that world, because it's not set in like our times, but the relationships, it was not giving. And there's a second book to the series. I don't know if it's the last one, but I got it on the Libby app because I was like, I guess I need to finish this story. I don't really know what's going to happen. The Goodreads results that I've seen say that it has a higher rating. Um, yeah, so lots of love for the author. I just didn't really love this particular book. I give it 3 stars. Sorry. Okay. So if you know me, you know that there's a particular series that I reread every winter. I don't know why. The first year that I read this book was 2019. I was going through a lot that year and I just really needed something like fun, exciting, cool. So I came across this book series. I legitimately bought the first book because it was pretty and ended up falling in love with it and reading the entire series in a week. Mind you, every book is like 300, almost 400 pages long. And that series is the Folk of the Air series, the first one being The Cruel Prince. So actually, I didn't read this one this year. I read it at the end of last year, but I felt like I had to count it just because it's part of the series. So I had started The Wicked King at the end of last year and finished it at the beginning of this year. And I then read The Queen of Nothing extremely fast. And on audiobook, it's like it's really spicy. But okay, so where to begin? So it's a fantasy series and it begins with like, this is not a spoiler because it's literally the first chapter. It begins with these two human twins. They're at home, they have an older sister, they're with their parents, and this guy shows up and is talking to their mom, and is like, is that my daughter, about their older sister. And she's like, you can't take her, blah blah blah. And the twins are confused because they're like, we thought this was our sister. And she refuses to let this strange man have the sister, and so he kills her and he kills the dad and then takes all of the kids. So this guy is one of the Fae, and the older sister is, I guess, half Fae, which makes her Fae anyway. I don't really know how the rules work, to be honest. But like I said, the two twins are human. So they end up growing up in this realm where everyone is like immortal. Some people have like almost like powers, not everybody, but they have abilities. There are certain things that they can't do because they're not Fae. So they get bullied and teased a lot. And then there is this group of four. So there are like a bunch of princes and princesses. The High King is Eldred. His youngest son is Prince Carden, um, who is just awful. And then he has 3 friends, Locke, Valerian, Nicasia. So there starts to be like some flirtation between Jude, the main character, and one of Carden's friends, Locke. And then there's a lot of like kind of between her and Carden. Honestly, I feel like I can't say much about this series if you haven't read it because I don't want to give it away. I will say that reading through The Cruel Prince, you get like 8 hours in on the audio version and then something completely different happens and you're like, what happened to the original plot of the movie? I don't know what's going to happen now. But I will say there is, without giving a lot away, there are some really good one-liners. There's a lot of really good like rivalry. It's very interesting. It's interesting from a romantic perspective. Once again, I won't say why, you just have to read it. And it's also interesting from like a fantastical perspective. So there's a good mix of like I'm the kind of person who it's rare that I will just read a romance book. Um, which is ironic because the work I just recently finished is a romance book, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm usually reading something that's like fantasy or action or dystopian, and then there's like really good romance in it. And I feel like this series contains that. I've also read the two side books, How the King of Elfame Learned to Hate Stories. It's either Learn to Hate Stories or Learn to Love Stories, but I think it's hate. Um, and then the Lost Sisters, and I can't really say what either of those is about either without giving away the plot. So I will probably be reading this series again in the winter. It's amazing. I wish I could say more. I'll probably do a video at some point just talking about this book series containing spoilers because it needs to be done. Like it just needs to be done. Oh, I forgot to give a rating for those books. 5 out of 5 for all of them. Easy. So yeah, so that is my January in review with my books. So I will be doing this again at the end of February. As of right now, let's see how many books I've read so far. As of right now, it looks like I've read 5 books. I'm almost done with the 6th book, and then I have this little poetry book that's like in my backpack that I'll probably read in like a day. Yeah, so if you have any suggestions of books that you would want me to read, drop them below. Like I said, I really like fantasy, but I'll honestly read anything. As long as it's not actually, no, I'll read anything. I'll basically read anything. I might talk about how much I hate it after, but I can't think of a specific genre that I really don't like. But yeah, so thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, like, share. Like I said, leave a comment, and I will see you next time.